Okay, welcome to topic 13. So in topic 13, what we'll be looking at is how the nutritional needs change throughout the life cycle. So this is going to go over two sessions, so this week's session and next week's session. So for this week, we're just focusing on what's happening during pregnancy and during the first year of life, and then next session, next week, we'll look at what happens in terms of nutrition for the other stages of life. There's an article that's provided there on campus called Healthy Eating During Pregnancy, which provides us with some information. And you can also look at chapter 16 of Understanding Nutrition. So what the areas we're going to focus on is what we mean by the correct nutritional needs, particularly how they can prevent various birth defects. We look at some common nutritional related concerns for pregnant women. Look at these terms called PICA and the fetal alcohol syndrome. Look at advantages of breastfeeding, and then look at a couple of problems that can happen in terms of the feeding of infants. All right, so today we're focusing on nutrition for pregnant women and nutrition for babies and infants. So your nutritional needs should be thought of before a person actually becomes pregnant. So for females, we need to avoid substances such as alcohol, drugs, caffeine, illegal drugs, some of the herbal supplements. So all of these things can cause harm to the unborn fetus. And also the mother should be at a normal birth weight, a normal BMI. And importantly, we need to start increasing the amount of folate or folic acid before pregnancy. And that's to prevent birth defects. Same applies for males. So even before conception, the males should be avoiding various substances, again, smoking, alcohol, drugs. Again, they should be increasing their levels of folate, also increase levels of zinc and some antioxidants. Otherwise, what can happen is you can have abnormal sperm, either very low count of sperm, or the sperm can't swim, or the sperm have actually got some sort of defect. So one of my jobs many years ago was actually counting up sperm counts and looking at these things under the microscope, working for a pathology lab. And yes, you would see all these sort of things. So you see double-headed sperm or double-tailed sperm, or sperm that was not viable, so it wasn't swimming, it wasn't doing the correct things. Now we need to think about nutritional needs before conception, because we need to get those levels of folic acid up, and if we don't, potentially it can lead to problems such as spina bifida or neural tube defect. So we need to start increasing our levels of folate. You can either have the synthetic version, folic acid, which works quite well, or you can have the natural version, the folate. And in terms of pregnancy, the important function is it actually prevents the birth defects and preventing neural tube defects or spina bifida. And you need to get the levels up to about 400 micrograms per day. And if you're using the artificial one, this keeps popping up. Okay, do that again. Yeah, if you're using artificial folic acid, no more than 1,000 micrograms, because it can actually become toxic if you have too much of it. So these are some natural sources of folate. So we can see here grains, broccoli, and other products. And remember, a lot of the grains and a lot of the cereals, they'll contain the added folic acid, the artificial folic acid, to prevent spina bifida. So what we're trying to do is prevent these neural tube defects or spina bifida, which can happen either on the spine or in the brain. So if it happens in the spine, it's called spina bifida. And if that was in the brain, it's called anencephaly. And with the anencephaly, normally the babies die as a stillbirth. And with the spina bifida, they've got permanent damage, and often they can't walk. And you can see here the incorrect development of the spinal cord, leading to that bulging or the neural tube. There's a very short video we'll have a quick look at, which goes through the development of spina bifida. I'll just need to change my audio. Need to switch from headphones to the computer. Let me know if you can't hear it, please.
If you are pregnant, you can take folic acid to help prevent certain birth defects in your baby. Folic acid and folate are two forms of the same B vitamin. Folate is the form that occurs naturally in foods, while folic acid is the man-made form added to multivitamins and fortified foods. Your body needs folic acid to help make new cells, including brain cells, during pregnancy, you need even more folic acid because your baby's body needs it too. Folic acid helps your baby's brain and spinal cord develop normally. Taking folic acid can significantly reduce the risk of neural tube defects in your developing baby, called an embryo at this stage. The neural tube begins as a tiny oval-shaped piece of embryonic tissue, which folds into a tube about 28 days after conception. When this tube closes properly, it continues to develop into your baby's brain and spinal cord. If the neural tube does not close due to the lack of folic acid in your diet, your baby may have a neural tube defect, such as spina bifida or anencephaly. In spina bifida, the neural tube fails to close at the bottom. As a result, the parts of the spine that enclose and protect the lower spinal cord do not completely form, allowing the cord to protrude. Children with this defect often require surgery and have permanent disabilities, including leg paralysis, developmental delays, and nervous system problems. In the condition called anencephaly, the neural tube fails to close at the top, preventing large parts of the brain and skull from developing completely. Babies with this defect are unable to live and usually die before birth or soon after. Folic acid may also protect against other birth defects, such as cleft lip and palate, and atrial septal defect, which is when a hole between the right and left upper chambers of the heart fails to close during development. Because the neural tube develops so early in pregnancy, often before a woman knows she's pregnant, experts recommend all women who are able to become pregnant take a daily multivitamin containing 400 micrograms of folic acid every day. During pregnancy, the need increases to 600 micrograms of folic acid each day. Experts recommend you take this multivitamin in addition to the food folate in your diet because your body does not absorb folate found naturally in food as easily as the man-made folic acid. Caregivers will often prescribe even 1,000 micrograms of folic acid daily to assure these minimal levels are covered. Even more may be required in some groups of women, including those with previous miscarriages and those women deficient in a folic acid metabolic enzyme. Talk with your caregiver about the optimal dose for you.
Okay, so in this instance, the artificial version, oh, I get my head set back up. So in this instance, the artificial version, the folic acid is actually better than the natural folate in that the body's actually able to absorb the folic acid a lot easier than the folate. But either way, you need to start increasing the levels of folic and folic acid even before pregnancy, and obviously during pregnancy as well, to prevent the spina bifida. And I've shown you this before, and that's why a number of health departments across the world make it a requirement that food is actually fortified with folic acid, particularly flour, bread, and cereals. All right, so during pregnancy, full pregnancy is 42 weeks. So you break it up into first, second, and third trimesters. Now, the reason why we're looking at these trimesters is because if if the mother is exposed, particularly in that first trimester over here, when lots of development is happening, so if this exposed to various substances, so whether it's smoke, alcohol, illicit drugs, they're very toxic to the fetus and can result in various birth defects. So here we can see the first trimester, the various components of the embryo that are developing, whether it's the hearts, limbs, and in red we can see that these are these can all be harmed by various substances, so whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever it might be. So it's very important that during that first trimester the mother is not exposed to any of these substances. In terms of energy requirements, so the macronutrients. So during that first trimester, you saw the embryo is very, very small. So there's no need for any significant increase during that first trimester in terms of additional nutrients. So additional protein, carbohydrate, or fat. Later on in the second and third trimester, that's when the fetus is growing, and so yes, we do need some extra calories there. So it's not a huge amount. It's only extra 1,400 kilojoules, and in the third trimester, 1,800 kilojoules. And during the pregnancy, we need obviously more blood for the baby, so we're going to need to increase our iron. And again, we want to prevent birth defects, so we're going to be increasing our folic and folic acid. So all nutrients and waste products are moved across the placenta. So obviously the nutrients move from the mother via the placenta to the fetus, and any waste products come back via the placenta back to the mother, then through the kidneys and so on. So anything that the mother consumes, so whether it's food poisoning bacteria over here, or whether it's one of these substances, alcohol, smoking, drugs, they'll get across from the placenta, from the mother, across the placenta to the unborn fetus. So need to take care in terms of the nutritional intake of the mother. Just showing the placenta, all of the blood vessels taking nutrients to the baby, and the waste products back. So in terms of nutrients, we've got the macronutrients up here. So these would be the proteins, carbohydrates, fats. So as I've already mentioned, a small increase in the second and third trimester. And then we've got the micronutrients down here, the vitamins and minerals. And some of these need to be increased as the fetus is actually developing. So what you're aiming for is a nice healthy baby of a birth weight of about 2.5 kilos. So that's a normal birth weight. If insufficient nutrients are supplied to the mother, this will be insufficient macronutrients, you might end up with an underweight baby. So here we can see a correct weight baby, 2.5 kilos, and here are a couple of underweight babies, less than 2.5. Problem with underweight babies, more prone to infection, prone to learning disabilities, physical disabilities. Any baby born before 38 weeks is called a preterm baby and often a low birth weight, less than 2.5 kilos. And we can avoid that. Often nutrition plays an important role, particularly getting to the correct birth weight of 2.5 kilos. So the mother needs to be monitored for her weight gain. Need to ensure that she's putting on enough weight to supply the nutrients to the baby, the fetus, but not so much that the mother gains an excessive amount of weight that can then lead to other problems such as diabetes or other problems or hypertension. So here's a table that's been recommended by the health departments in terms of the sort of weight gain the mother should be aiming for during pregnancy. So if you're starting off with a normal BMI, so if the mother has a normal BMI, by the end of the pregnancy, she only should be gaining between 11.5 to 16 kilos. So that'd be by the third trimester. If the mother is already underweight, well, expecting a little bit more weight being gained, and if the mother is already overweight, expecting the mother to gain a little bit less weight. So average for a normal mothers would be 11.5 to 16 kilos. So up to 16 kilos, where's that weight going? So the weight's going as fat stores for the mother, the various tissues for the fetus, extra blood supply, so to include blood supply for the uterus, blood supply for the placenta and for the baby, and increase in the uterus and the breasts. So that's making up the extra 16 kilos. So have a quick look at these nutritional needs during pregnancy, starting off with the macronutrients, the micronutrients, and look at fluid requirements. So overall energy requirements, so there'd be a combination of the proteins, fats, carbohydrates, up to about 450 calories per day in the second and third trimester. In terms of protein, we're going up from about 0.8 grams per day up to 1.1 grams per day, and the carbohydrates are being increased to 175 grams per day. Fat, they're recommending no change during the pregnancy. However, you might want to increase the omega-3, which is important for brain development. And then we're going to look at the micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals. We already mentioned the folate and folic acid to prevent spina bifida. Other things that need to increase are vitamin B12, vitamin C, vitamin A, iron, zinc. In brackets, I've got you need to monitor your vitamin D intake and calcium, but they don't need to be actually increased. So you can see in the table the recommended increases. So increasing your folate and folic acid by 50%, B12 by 8%, vitamin C by 13%, vitamin A by 10%, iron by 50%, and zinc by 38%. All right, so we've already talked about folic acid, and we already mentioned the requirement of 400 micrograms per day, and we're starting that before pregnancy and also during pregnancy. For B12, it helps the folate and folic acid to work, and they're recommending 2.6 micrograms, so a very small amount per day. Vitamin C is an antioxidant and also helps produce the connective tissue. So we're going to need all that connective tissue for as the fetus develops the tissues and muscles. And they're recommending 85 micrograms per day. And vitamin A, they're saying that needs to be increased by 10%. So that's good for eyesight, for example. Zinc is important for making the chromosomes, both the DNA and the RNA, and that needs to increase to 38%. And iron, obviously, for the production of red blood cells, and that needs to increase by 50%. So in calcium, you've got in brackets, we need to maintain the normal level of 1,000 micrograms per day. You don't need to actually increase it because during pregnancy, the mother's actually able to absorb both the calcium and vitamin D a bit better than normal. Fluids, so for females, normally around that 2 litres per day. It's just slightly increased to 2.3 litres per day because you've got fluid that you need to supply the placenta and the fetus. Here's a list of potential problems that can occur, nutrition-related problems that could occur during pregnancy. So we'll go through and have a look at these quickly. So this one is the morning sickness. So this is the nausea, vomiting that can occur normally in the first trimester. And seems to be a result of changes in hormones. So there's not really much you can do except for rest. Then we're going to have a look at these food cravings. So you can end up with a condition called pica, where during pregnancy there's a craving for non-food items. So things like chalk, dirt, coffee grounds, and other non-food items. During pregnancy, you can develop gestational diabetes. So it's a form of diabetes, which normally after the birth of the baby, normally the insulin levels go back to normal, and no longer is the mother diabetic. You can also have a form of hypertension, so preeclampsia. This again is associated during pregnancy. And again, as with the gestational diabetes, after the birth of the baby, it tends to resolve itself. Pregnant teens have got additional problems because the teens themselves are still developing, and pregnant teens are more likely to have underweight babies, preterm babies. A pregnant mother that's vegetarian may need to take supplements because with the lack of animal-based nutrients, the mother may be lacking in certain vitamins and certain minerals. So one substance you need to monitor is your intake of caffeine. So during pregnancy, it's recommended you don't take any more than 2 cups per day. Otherwise, it may actually cause problems such as miscarriage and low birth weights. Okay, alcohol. It's recommended that the mother doesn't consume any alcohol at all. What can happen is if there's alcohol consumption, particularly excessive alcohol consumption during the first trimester, you can end up with a baby suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome, and that involves the face and limbs and heart not developing properly, and also having developmental disabilities. So here's an example of a child suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome. So besides the developmental problems, there's also some physical problems that develop. So things such as the small head, the low nasal bridge, thin lips. So these are all characteristics that the child has been exposed to alcohol during pregnancy. Okay, quickly have a look at this video talking about fetal alcohol syndrome, how the alcohol affects the fetus and the consequences. So I'll just switch across again from headphones to computer.
The fetus receives all the nutrients it needs to grow and develop through the placenta. If a woman drinks alcohol, also known as ethanol, during pregnancy, the alcohol in her blood passes through the placenta to the fetus, posing a risk for fetal alcohol syndrome, or FAS. The mechanisms by which alcohol acts on and interferes with normal fetal development, and whether there is an amount of alcohol consumption which does not place the fetus at risk of FAS, are still largely unknown. It is thought the developing fetal brain may be highly sensitive to alcohol. During normal neurotransmission, neurons release chemicals that bind to receptors on other neurons, thereby propagating a signal. Ethanol may block certain receptors in the fetal brain, which can damage neural tissue. Thereby decreasing the amount of nutrients essential to fetal growth. FAS can cause lifelong mental and physical defects for the fetus. Some characteristics of FAS may include low birth weight, facial abnormalities, small head size, organ dysfunction, behavioral problems, mental retardation, slow growth, and poor coordination. There is no known safe amount of alcohol to drink during pregnancy. Pregnant women should either not drink any alcohol or should seek medical advice if they have questions.
Just switch back to headphones. Okay, there's an Australian website up the top there that is dedicated to fetal alcohol syndrome. So if you want to do some further reading about the effects of alcohol during pregnancy, there's a good site to have a look at. Smoking is also potentially dangerous. You can see some of the potential problems. Again, miscarriages, stillbirths, preterm babies, low weight babies, poor growth of the fetus. And then we've got all those various illegal drugs, which can cause all sorts of birth defects, and again, could actually lead to a miscarriage. Even some of the herbal supplements can actually cause harm to the fetus. So all of those substances, so whether it's alcohol, smoking, illicit drugs, herbal supplements, can cause a variety of problems, either physical defects, mental defects, or result in the death of the fetus. Another thing we need to do during pregnancy is particular bacteria. So we've got bacteria such as Listeria monocytogenes, and that can actually lead to the death of the fetus and result in a stillbirth. So the health department recommends to pregnant women that they don't consume certain foods. So all of these foods, raw milk, raw meat, raw fish, even products from the deli, they're all known to be carriers of this bacteria, Listeria monocytogenes, which is known to cause stillbirth. So this is a brochure produced by the health department. So you can see in their brochure for pregnant women. So in red, we've got a list of foods which should not be eaten during pregnancy. So again, you've got foods from the deli, raw foods, so raw seafood here, raw meat, soft cheeses shouldn't be eaten. So here's the soft cheeses over here. So there'd be things like camembert, ricotta, cottage cheese. Don't drink raw milk. Not sure why they say fried ice cream, but anyway, there you go. I didn't know that one. And salads, because salads are, again, straight from the farm. If they're not washed properly, they could carry dirt and they could actually carry Listeria monocytogenes. Now that's in regards to the raw eggs, and then they talk about, in particular with salads, talking specifically about sprouts. So there's various foods that may contain Listeria, so these need to be avoided during pregnancy. Health department makes recommendations for exercise and fitness. So remember, you're not supposed to be putting on too much weight at the end of the pregnancy. If the mother starts off a normal birth weight, no more than 16 kilos by the third trimester. So if you put on too much weight, then you've got problems with your hypertension and diabetes and other concerns. This table here summarizes some of the things we've been talking about. So avoiding substances, avoiding foods that may contain contaminants, such as that Listeria, causing the food poisoning. Okay, once the baby is born, then the nutritional needs for the baby, the main nutritional food that we should be feeding the baby for the first 6 months is the mother's milk. So we're going to have a quick look at breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is the ideal food for newborn babies because it's got the perfect blend of nutrients. Not only has it got the perfect blend of nutrients, but it's also got antibodies. So the mother's antibodies are passed to the baby. So for the first 6 months or so, the baby cannot produce its own antibodies, and it's relying on the mother's antibodies to fight off disease. Particularly in the first 10 days. So first 10 days, it's not quite milk that mother produces. It produces this thing called colostrum. So the colostrum looks like it's basically like whey. So whey's got that sort of like a greenish tinge to the milk, and in that whey is very high in protein and very high in antibodies. So for the first 10 days, the mother produces lots of this colostrum and gives the baby additional protein, but very importantly, additional antibodies, which helps the baby fight off any disease. Let's have a quick look at this video. Only goes a couple of minutes talking about the benefits of breastfeeding. Again, I'll just switch over.
Breastfeeding is important for a mother to decrease her chances of postpartum depression, osteoporosis, cervical, ovarian, and breast cancers. Breastfeeding is important for a newborn for bonding with their mother, decreasing their chances of SIDS, diabetes, obesity, respiratory infections and GI infections, and cancers that can be more common with formula-fed kids. And the longer a mother and baby breastfeed, the longer those benefits will last and compound on top of each other. The Breastfeeding Resource Center supports mothers by helping them with support groups and one-on-one consultations, as well as selling some breastfeeding supplies. We also help our mothers on the floor with hands-on help when they need it. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization recommend 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding and then up to 1 to 2 years and beyond of breastfeeding, as long as mother and baby both desire to. Breastfeeding support groups can help mothers with education, reassurance, and camaraderie with other mothers. It's basically a free consultation in a group, because your lactation consultant is there and we can help you with your needs right there.
All right, so in the video, so there's not just benefits for the baby in terms of the nutritional needs and the antibodies, but also a number of benefits for the mother as well to be breastfeeding. So again, recommendation is a minimum of the first 6 months. So some of the benefits we've already mentioned: ideal nutrients, the antibodies that are provided to the baby, well, assist the mother in weight loss, prevents the mother getting pregnant again very quickly, stops ovulation, creates that bonding between the baby and the mother, and it's pretty convenient and very cost effective to be breastfeeding. We've got a table there that lists all the potential benefits of breastfeeding. Again, meeting all the nutritional needs for the infant and a number of benefits for the mother as well. So just as we saw previously during pregnancy that anything the mother eats goes to the fetus via the placenta, again, anything the mother eats is now transferred to the baby through the breast milk. So if the mother's consuming illicit drugs, excessive amounts of caffeine, or suffering some severe infections such as a virus, all those things can actually be transferred to the baby via the breast milk. So it requires energy to produce the milk.
Just love settling in with a good.
The mother's going to need additional 800 calories per day. So to produce good quality milk, the mother needs to be consuming up to 25 grams of protein extra and up to 80 grams of carbohydrate. Okay, eventually you might need to switch across to formula milk. Can't be using just normal milk because it doesn't contain the correct nutritional needs for a human baby. Remember, it's designed for a calf, not for a human baby. So you should be using specially formulated infant powder. Then, as during the first year of the baby, or as they become an infant, their nutritional needs will change. They're growing pretty quickly, so you need to provide sufficient energy for that growth spurt. Their digestive system's not quite developed, so you need to be careful in regards to which foods are introduced. Also, what's not developed fully is their immune system, so you need to be careful with introducing allergies as well. Okay, so you've got a list of some nutrition needs for infants. So talking about energy needs.
You know, Jerry Krause was right.
They might need vitamin K, vitamin D. This is not going to come up on any quiz or test that I give you. Again, the recommendation is you have breast milk for the first 6 months. Okay, things you need to be careful with is introducing foods that the infant can choke on, or any foods that can bring about an allergy. So things like honey can potentially cause botulism. The babies could be allergic to proteins in goat's milk, cow's milk. You don't want to introduce too much sugar, either through things like juice or foods containing sugar. So things we need to be concerned about, food allergies, colic, reflux, deficiencies, dehydration. So when you're introducing food, you need to be aware that there's a potential for an allergy to develop. So they recommend you introduce one food at a time and then introduce a new food a week later and look for any allergic reactions. So you're looking for skin rashes or for swelling, which will indicate that the child is actually allergic to the food. There's just showing the allergic reaction is an antibody-antigen reaction. So here's showing your antibodies. So these are your white blood cells, and your body recognizes the food as an allergen, as something foreign, and then tries to remove that foreign matter. And as it's trying to remove that foreign matter, it'll bring about the allergic reaction. So it could be something mild, like a rash, itching, or it could be something quite dangerous, which could lead to anaphylactic shock or irregular heartbeat. So here it's some of the recommendations. So they recommend, right? Remember, first 6, ideally just the breast milk, and then slowly introduce foods which are known to be less likely to cause an allergy. So normally they might introduce a rice cereal first. Again, you look for any allergic reactions. There's no problem there. You can introduce the next food, which might be a stewed vegetable or stewed fruit. And then later on, you might start introducing other foods. But all the time, you're watching to see if there's any allergic reactions. Okay, as babies, some of the things you need to look for is reflux, whether they become anemic, they haven't got enough iron in their not enough iron supplied in their nutritional intake, and infants are quite prone to dehydration. Remember, their body is mainly water, so you need to take care that they're being hydrated correctly. And then as the baby moves into the toddler stage, again, another time of fairly rapid growth. So you're going to need additional energy during that rapid growth. And here are some recommendations in terms of sufficient energy and supplying sufficient fluid. Things to watch out for is allergies, whether their diets might be deficient in certain vitamins and minerals. Okay, and that's my last slide. So there's not going to be much on toddlers or infants on any test or quiz. It'll be mainly the information about the pregnancy and the breastfeeding. All right, so I'm going to end the session there. I'll open up for any questions that you might have. Okay, you can see there's not many questions coming through, so we might call it a day, and we'll have our last session next week. Thanks, everyone.